Hey everybody, this is Spike Howlingwell, and I was gonna review and rank every Barbara Michaels novel. I bought them all last year and I decided I'm gonna read two or three of them a month until I read them all, and then make some kind of tier list for you all. And apologize for my little pretentious opening. I just thought I should play some Gothic music since Barbara Michaels is a Gothic author. So that's fun. So to start with, she actually wrote under a different name as well, Elizabeth Peters. She wrote supernatural fiction under Barbara Michaels and mystery novels as Elizabeth Peters. Her real name was Barbara Mertz, M-E-R-T-Z. Just some background info there. But I'm going to rank them all in three tiers, top tier, middle tier, and then lowest, meaning, not recommended at all, not so great. So let's start. I'm going to do it all chronologically. So starting with first, we got here The Master of Black Tower. Her very first novel, as far as I know, that she ever wrote. And it was not published for a very long time. It was written in 1966, and it wasn't published until I think 1975 or so, like 9-10 years later. And it wasn't even reprinted after that hardback of it for like 20 years after that, till the late 90s. And I can see why. I have to admit, this is starting off, not to make her seem, bad to anybody at first, but this is probably her worst book. It's not so great. I mean, it's her first try, but I would definitely say it's lower tier. It's very cliched. It's like a pastiche of like previous female Gothic fiction writers, like, Phyllis A. Whitney, Victoria Holt kind of stuff. The villain is very, very cliched. I mean, he's the deformed and has a messed up hand, and he acts really menacing the whole time, and she tries to give you this red herring that, he's just creepy because the heroine thinks he is. But it turns out, of course, he's the villain, and it's not surprising whatsoever. So, not recommended at all. First book, lower tier, gotta say. But she begins to hit her stride with the next book, her first published, I believe, Sons of the Wolf, from 1967. This is where I think she finds her bearings. There's two brothers, older and younger. One's really creepy, one's really nice. And it's one of those things, she's the main heroine, is in love with a good boy and a bad boy, and you have to figure out what she's going to go for. And it's possible that their dad, who owns this huge mansion, of course, as in all these books, he has some kind of, he might be a werewolf. It's implied throughout the book. I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything, but he may be in some creepy way, like a Satanist or supernatural. A nice, fun read, not very long. Some of her earlier books are only maybe 190 pages, not even 200. But I had fun. I read it all in one afternoon. It's one of those kind of books where if you just want a quick read, pretty fun stuff. And I'd say like middle to top tier, like not absolutely recommended, but pretty fun. I didn't. It was also published in England under an alternate title called The Mystery of the Moors, Moors. But I think she changed it to Son of the Wolf when it was published here because not many people in America know what a Moor is. There's not many Moors around here. I don't think. I don't know. But then coming up next, her first probably bestseller, I'd say, as far as I know, Amy, Come Home. She's real well known for this one. 1968 it was published. It's top tier. Her first, I'd say, really top tier book. She really creates her own style, even though she uses all the old cliches of those older works, from the 50s and stuff. It's pretty unexpected. Just like a simple ghost story. Girl is being haunted, possessed in a creepy old house, and they need to figure out what's going on and get rid of the spirit. So highly recommended. Again, short. I read it in one day. What's up next? Prince of Darkness, 1969. I'd say a middle tier book. Again, not very long. Awesome book cover, that's very metal looking. Hold on, I can't get it on screen. pentagram of black candles on the floor, some kind of satanic ritual. Very, it makes me feel like Beavis and Butthead. I want to go dun 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 dun. I don't know. Uh, the title, I'd say, is not have anything to do with anything. It's kind of a misnomer. There's no Satan or anything that appears. I mean, not to give away what's going on, but the explanation at the end is a little bit like a soap opera where, again, maybe spoilers, skip ahead 30 seconds. The main character, or it turns out not to be really dead. One of the characters who they thought was dead is not really dead. And it's one of those, and an evil identical twin is involved in the whole mystery as well. So I was very confused by this is her only book, I believe, where the protagonist is a male. Most of her books, I think every one of her other books except this one, it's a female, not 20-year-old heroine. This one, it's like a young college-age guy who's like I believe he's a reporter. I had a lot of trouble understanding his motivations, and because he's been hired by this creepy guy, rich guy, to seduce this widow, and I was a little bit confused as to why. Maybe I missed something at the beginning, but I'd say middle tier, not like most recommended, but it was fun. What's after that? What I found in one of her oddest books, it has a very strange start. The Dark on the Other Side, 1970, published. This is a woman who may or may not be having a freak out. She hears her house talking to her, and her house tells her to kill her husband all the time. She hears these voices, but then like 50 pages in, that whole scenario vanishes from the story and never comes up again. It's like the author just forgot what she was doing, and then it just sort of changes from there. So I don't know. I also felt like this is the first book where, even though it's a common Gothic trope, that the heroine is a little bit naive or dumb, this character is really, really dumb. She's, I don't know, she just comes off as very, very dumb. It turns out her husband is a Satanist warlock, but then, not to give it away, but he's easily defeated. And so, but this is during, late 60s written, probably not late 60s. And so, that was the era of The Omen and the Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist. So that kind of stuff was real creepy and new back in the day. The Satanists being everywhere. Long before the Satanic Panic, this was a trope that people used for a minute. I'd say, I don't know, maybe lower tier on that one. I wouldn't recommend it too much. What's after that? Oh, The Crying Child. I think this is her briefest book. Like only 150 pages. I like that nice old, if you can see a Gothic cover, lady looking out the window. A quick read. I think I read this in one afternoon as well. I'd say middle tier. I don't remember a lot about the plot. This woman visits a small island where her friend and his wife live, and there's this ghostly wailing of a baby somewhere that nobody can find coming out of the woods, and you just find out, it's the ghost of a child who something terrible happened to. So if they solve the mystery, as usual in these books, the ghost goes away, or it gets peace, and that's the basic premise of that one. What was next after that? Grey Gallows, 1972. I'd say lowest tier. I really wouldn't recommend it. It wasn't bad. It was just kind of bland. It felt like a rewrite of her first book, The Master of Black Tower. It had a real similar mansion and a suspicious older guy who marries this younger girl for nefarious reasons, mostly, for her money or whatever, without giving too much away. What does it say? Bound to a man of evil secrets. So she marries this baron, and it turns out, he's actually penniless, and he's trying to gaslight her. It's a little bit like Gaslight, I guess. What next? I'd say this is a top tier one, or maybe top 2 middle tier, which I had a lot of fun with this one. Very brief again, just like her earlier books. They seemed like they were written pretty quickly, because she was also writing other novels under the name Elizabeth Peters at this time, so she had 2-3 books out a year for decades. So uh, I like the heroine in this. She had a real powerful personality. I think this is the one where you can really tell from now on all the heroines of her books are just herself as her younger self. 20-year-old, ingenue young girl who you know comes to a new small town. She's real unwelcome. People think she's a witch because she can just because she's intelligent. They think she's clairvoyant and she's just able to guess things about people. So it turns out to be funny that the witch in the story is not someone else who's an antagonist. It's the heroine. And of course, this is what it starts. I think this is the first one, but maybe not. Nearly all of Barbara Michael's books involve a cat who somehow saves the day. And it's just like I don't know, it's her thing. Almost every one of her books involves a cat. Several times the cat actually saves one of the characters just by jumping out at the last minute to stop someone from being murdered. It's a little silly. It reminds me of I don't know what Murder She Wrote, something kind of campy. But still, I'd say middle to top tier for that one. Up next, I'd say top tier for this one. This was really fun. House of Many Shadows. What was this one about? Oh, this is one about a character named Meg. I think this is like the third character so far. I think she has like 7 characters I notice all the time. Named Meg. Maybe that means something to her personally, but the character in this is also named that. And she lives with her aunt, this woman, Meg, and no, her aunt is renting out her mansion to her. And there's this other guy she rents the other half of the house to. And then Meg starts having I think they don't like have an affair, but they discover that if they touch each other, suddenly ghosts appear or supernatural things happen, but only while they touch. And it reminded me of something funny because there's a couple on YouTube nowadays who uses that. They pretend to, I'm not saying they pretend to be psychic, but you know what I mean. They're on the Sam and Colby show with the Conjuring House, and when they touch each other, they claim to get tapping sounds of yes or no from spirits. That old joke, that thing. But this is probably the best romance plot. Some of her romance plots seem a little forced or just thrown in there. This felt like it was more organically developing, and it was more believable. It just didn't come out of nowhere, because some of the other ones... But this was neat, too, because it turned out, if I remember right, the Civil War was involved. Like, they're Civil War ghosts, and so they're conflicted about all kinds of things. The ghosts in the house. And again, discovering what their issue is causes them to, go to rest, and the story concludes. But I highly recommend that one. What we got? Here's one I found of a nice old edition. I think this is the old 70s edition. All those others I showed you are like 90s reprints by, what is it? Berkeley Books. These are her original Fawcett Crest. Again, a short book, The Sea King's Daughter. This was real fun. It was almost like a female version of Indiana Jones, or like if Indiana Jones was told from the viewpoint of one of his girlfriends. That's what I felt like. Nothing supernatural in this one, just a girl who discovers her long-lost father. He's an archaeologist doing a underwater scuba diving dig, again, of the coast of the Mycenae of ancient Greece, in some, Greek island. I don't remember which one. Thera? I don't remember. But she's helping him with this excavation, but someone in the town is trying to stop him from discovering something in the excavation, and they start sabotaging him and try to kill the daughter several times. And there's a lot of fun red herrings that actually are surprising. And even bizarrely enough, it turns out there's a pagan cult of female goddess worshippers on this town that control the city, and some World War II Nazis appear out of nowhere, like old men who escaped Nazism, who turned out to be behind things, of course. That's what reminded me of Indiana Jones. I'd say top tier. This was really fun. Again, one so fun that I read it in like one afternoon. What was the next one? Patriot's Dream. This is kind of a longer book. I didn't have much to say about this one. It was, I'd say middle to lower tier. Not terrible. There was just a lot of rambling that felt unimportant. Uh, it's about this woman who's, studying, I think, Colonial Williamsburg or somewhere back in Maryland. And she's doing research on her family who were her ancestors who were in the colonial Revolutionary War. And there's actually a moving ending where, I mean, not to spoil anything, but she basically meets her great 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 grandfather. She goes back in time for 5 minutes in order to talk to him because he died before the end of the revolution, and he wanted to know if his family prospered afterward or if America ever left England. The colonies ever left England, and she tells him yes. And I don't know, it's kind of ridiculously moving in its own way, I thought. Up next, 1977, Wings of the Falcon. This is probably her only straight up historical romance. Nothing supernatural, not even really any mystery or intrigue. Just this English girl who discovers she's an heiress to a large Italian villa in Italy. But when she goes to move there, her distant family controls the place. And it's during the time period of Giuseppe Garibaldi, unifying Italy at that time. Not many people remember that whole issue. But it turns out her cousin is part of a secret political alliance, and he's a rebel leader. And he's wanted as a vigilante. It was pretty obvious the whole time that the cousin was the rebel leader. I mean, she tries to hide it, but it couldn't be anybody else. So it's pretty predictable, but very brief, only like 150 pages. No, wait, 250, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend it greatly. Like lower tier. Here's a great one. I enjoyed this one a lot. Barbara Michaels' Wait for What Will Come. 1978. Top tier. I'd say S tier. Very fun. Very Barbara Michaels. This is where she does stuff other writers wouldn't do. I mean, there's like, this woman moves to, I'm going to say Scotland or maybe Northern England, like by the Hebrides. And she inherits this estate on the edge of the coast. And the locals say there's a prophecy that every 100 years, the oldest daughter of her family will be taken away by this demon lover, they say. He'll come to claim her off the coast. He's a merman who rules the area since Celtic times or something like that. Very hilarious. Very Scooby-Doo style story where you're like, oh, well, that's unexpected. The villain is very unexpected. You didn't see it coming. And I like how it blurs a lot of her books. I mean, without spoiling too much, she makes it unclear, well, is it going to be a supernatural explanation or is it going to be a logical explanation? It was Old Man Withers pretending to be a ghost using cameras and a tape recorder to freak out the heroine to, again, gaslight. A lot of gaslighting in these stories. But I like that. It was fun. Up next, Walker in Shadows, 1979. Though the cover, a lot of these sometimes, I swear that the people who wrote these cover blurbs didn't ever read the book. It says, her most chilling novel, a haunted love that refused to die. And I was like, what? I don't remember there being any kind of I don't know. It doesn't really describe it at all. The House Where Darkness Lives. This had a fun atmosphere just because there were several interesting characters. It's this young widow who's like in her late 20s, but she also has a teenage son. I guess she had it, when she was in her teens. She ends up buying this mansion, and across the street from the mansion is another mansion that looks exactly like it. It's like a twin mansion. It was built by two brothers who were on both different sides of I want to say the Revolutionary War. And even though they disliked each other politically, they still wanted to be together as family, so they built these twin houses. And both of the houses are haunted. So the son starts dating this young girl next door, whose father is very mysterious and kind of menacing, and it tries to make him out as like a villain. and he might be abusive toward his daughter. Uh, though, of course, the son, Mark, because he's in love with the girl, he figures out the entire mystery on his own and tries to convince his mother what they need to do to stop the haunting. And it was kind of surprising. I liked the characters. There was some, though it made no sense. I mean, spoiler, skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't want to hear the end. The widow ends up with the father, the teenage boy Mark ends up with, I think her name Kathy, the girl across the street. And since they're dating, the young widow marries the older guy across the street as well. Even though there's no build up to that, like literally the last 5 pages, she's like, "Oh, I suddenly am in love with you, and let's get married." They had no interactions until then. Very bizarre. I thought it was tacked on. Um, what else? 1980. Sadly, I wanted to like this, but it was, I'd say, lowest tier. It's her most uninteresting character. She has no personality. It's just there to sort of narrate the girl in this. It's about a girl whose father was a famous, I don't know what you want to call it, like a spiritualist in the late 1700s, and uh, she discovers, that maybe he's trying to haunt her, and she's taken in by this wealthy woman who admired her father, and she's trying to contact him beyond the grave. And there's a couple fun scenes where there's like some scary seances, but then when you find out what's really going on, it's again Scooby-Doo-ish, and it's not very good. So I'd say lower tier. I wouldn't recommend this one. Getting to, what is this year? 81. Someone in the House. I'd say her best book, or maybe second or third best, top S tier. Really fun. So good. You'll probably see this a lot in bookstores if you don't see any of her other books. It's so popular, I had a lot of trouble finding an uncreased spine and one that still has the step back art. Not, how when these like this, it'll be broken or someone destroyed. A midnight lover beckons. The moonlit terror begins. There's a lot of ghost sex in this. It's very kind of creepy and erotic at the same time. This guy moves into this mansion where there's a girl who, for whatever reason, the ghost just, randomly has sex with him while he's asleep and he's not aware of it. So it's his roommate who figures it out. This girl who's staying with him for writing a historical book of some kind. I guess they call it spectrophilia. I really recommend it. It's so fun all the way through. Even though you never really find out what the ghost wanted. So I guess because of that, she wrote after that, 1982, the next year? Black Rainbow, which is the prequel to Someone in the House. I love this cover. There's like these creepy stone statue cherubs and a vault mausoleum. Unfortunately, maybe her worst book, or maybe second or third worst book, next to Master of Black Tower. I wouldn't recommend it. I almost didn't finish it. I kind of yada the last 100 pages. The characters, again, very Gothic heroines, extremely dumb, like extraordinarily dumb. But it's supposed to take place in the late 1800s, and the girls are just naive or whatever. But I couldn't stand them. Again, another one's named Meg. I don't know what's up with the Megs in these books. Terrible, terrible. For being a sequel to Someone in the House, I was very disappointed. So don't stay away from that one. It'll like turn you off to her writing, I'd say. I keep picturing, Meg from Family Guy, Peter's abuse of her or something like that. Now, I had a lot of trouble finding her next couple books. She apparently changed publishers in the early 80s. So this is, 83? Here I Stay, published by Tor. Because when all her books were later republished by Berkeley, I don't know why, but they apparently didn't get the rights to this one and the next book of hers. So they're very hard to find. I had to go way out of my way to find these ones. I enjoyed this one a lot. The heroine and her little brother, who's just been in a car accident and she has to take care of him. He's a teenage boy that got terribly injured and has dealing with being, handicapped. That was very moving. I thought that was very well written. What else about it? I don't remember much about the story. it felt like she was a real similar character than the girl from Witch, that other novel. And it had a sad ending. Most of these books just sort of had a petered out ending. You know, the ghost disappears and everyone's okay again and never appears. This had a very tragic. I felt, depressed at the end of this one, but highly recommended. I like this one a lot. And up next, the same publisher, Tor, 1984, I believe. Yeah, I'd say middle tier. This was a little slow. The first 100 pages are very meandering. It's just introducing characters, and nothing exciting happens. A lot of red herrings or a lot of fake villains where you think, oh, that guy's weird. Why is he acting like that? But it's just nothing going on with that. This is one of her ones where there's a little kid who becomes best friends with the heroine, and something's not right about him mentally. She does that in several books. What about it, though? It turned out a lot like Prince of Darkness, where somebody who's supposed to be dead isn't really dead, and they did it to get away with something, criminal. They're trying to hide them, like a fake your own death to get away with some kind of crime. And skip ahead 30 seconds if you want to hear this hilarious ending where it turns out a little boy who seems to be crazy is being dosed by his family members with acid, with LSD, in order to make him crazy so that they can lock him up and steal his estate and all his money, which I found kind of silly and hilarious, but it's actually kind of a funny plan. What we got next? Oh, I'd say maybe her second best book. If you read no other book by her, I'd recommend this one the most. I think maybe. Be Buried in the Rain. Beautiful book cover. I really enjoy that. I leave this one sticking out. I don't in the bookshelf, so you can see the cover when you walk by one of my bookshelves because I just love the embossed silver, that sad baby cherub crying by the mausoleum. Great atmosphere. This is both very dark and gothic and has a lot of sense of humor. Almost immediately, there's a lot of sarcasm in the descriptions of people, and the heroine is, again, a little naive, but she quickly learns that people around her are not what they seem. This is her most V.C. Andrewish, I'd say, book, in terms of there being a terrible, dark secret an evil grandmother is hiding about her estate and her family that she doesn't want anyone to know without giving anything more than that away. Highly recommend. Top S tier. Check this one out. Seek it out. So after that, she became pretty famous. That suddenly, that was her. You know what I mean? Like her first major paperback bestseller, and she started to become more well known. And for decades, she'd just been sort of, out there as a Gothic writer. So suddenly, she wrote probably her biggest her first New York Times, I think, bestseller. Barbara Michaels or Mertz or Elizabeth Peters, whatever you want to call her. She had a degree, I believe a doctorate or maybe just 2 masters, something like that, in Egyptology. So she brings it up a lot in her Elizabeth Peters books, but this is the first and I think the only time she brings up Egyptology as Barbara Michaels. Really great story. It's so popular. Again, I couldn't find one with the step back cover not damaged. But Search the Shadows from 1987. Shadows of the past are often the deadliest. I love those little step back covers. Nice thick book, born of a secret tainted bloodline. This girl is getting married, and she does a blood test to see, that it's okay for her to marry, her fiance, that their children won't have any weird problems. And she discovers she has, I don't remember what it is, Tay-Sachs or sickle cell anemia, one of those terrible diseases that if a family is too interbred with the same race, you get these terrible genetic disorders. She discovers she has a predilection of that and realizes that can't be possible unless she's actually, of a gypsy descent or something like that. So her mother has passed away, so she doesn't know what to do. She's never known who her father is, just that her mother got pregnant while at the University of Chicago. So she goes as a fake grad student, like an intern, to work for these three older professors, all three of whom she suspects might be her father. And all of them are great characters. These are scary guys. All of them seem like villains, and you don't know what's going to happen. The Egyptian part is kind of just there. It's not really an integral part of the story, but it's because Barbara loves Egyptology, clearly. It's just full of grand descriptions of antiques and how archaeology works and how the archaeology department at the university works. I highly recommend. Maybe her best book. If you read nothing else by her, either this, Someone in the House, or Be Buried in the Rain, I'd say just if you only read three of this lady's books, highly recommended. Though not so much, unfortunately, I think as she became more and more famous, this happens with some writers, they suddenly become, I don't know what to call it, you know, not so good anymore. This is Smoke and Mirrors. This is one of her only books that takes place almost entirely in the modern world. Most of them, have flashbacks to the past. This was a very, very terrible. She just seemed like she was in a bad mood when she wrote this. I don't know what her issue was, but there's a nice step back cover. What is it? Games of power, games of fear, and someone's breaking all the rules. And it's her only political novel, and I thought it was full of some just terrible political ranting. I don't like when, whether you're conservative or liberal, I don't like when authors just decide there's no plot. Let's just go on a long rant about my politics, no matter whether the reader cares or not. I did not finish it. I mean, I got near the end, and I'm like, I just don't care, unfortunately. So, totally no good. Not recommended. Oh wait, I think I got something out of order. She had one before that. This one I remember seeing a lot in bookstores back in the day. Oh, here's her with her cat. She has a lot of cats in her books. There's Barbara Michaels. A Deadly Secret from the Past. Shattered Silk. This is a very beautiful cover. It's a dress. And I guess, when silk dresses, she brings this up. It's the main plot point of the book. Silk dresses that are more than 100 years old, they rot in the center. And it's called shattered silk when that happens. That it causes a rot and a split. So there's this cool step back cover of these mannequins strewn around this canopy bed. Really fun. The heroine was cool. Even though I don't know, the villain had a very odd motivation that I didn't quite get, but the work up to the ending was good. I was scared up for the heroine. She had opened a antique clothes business in this small town, and she finds out there's people who don't want these dresses to be examined because it turns out they're part of a crime scene from like 40, 50 years previously, and she's going to accidentally reveal some secrets of older people in the town who don't want these things known. I'd say top to middle tier, not absolutely recommended, but really good. What's next? I don't know. Oh, Into the Darkness. I love this cover. You can tell this is one at the height of her fame. This was 1990. This one, she was a big, big bestseller. You have the huge letters, nice pink font. I like how what is this? A hidden legacy, a dark fortune. No one is safe from the secrets of the past. Oh, and the ring, this skeleton ring is sent to this woman who's inherited a jewelry business. And someone sent her this scary ring that is obviously a threat. It says, "Here I lie and wait for you." Meaning someone wants her dead. They're waiting for her in the grave. And there's no way to see, it's kind of a Agatha Christie-like where you could never possibly have guessed who the villain is. Or I didn't see it coming at all. I was like, what person they randomly mentioned on page 30 or something turns out to be the villain. They never actually appear on text. They're in the background. So but I like the background information she gives on the jewelry business, and the characters were all interestingly, foreboding, whether they turn out to be evil or not. She likes to, make you think maybe they are. They're just maybe jerks sometimes, and they're not actually the evil character. I'd say top to middle tier. Not absolutely recommended, but if you're looking for something like that, very gothic, a lot of ambience. Then, unfortunately, I think because she got so popular during this point, her books start to go downhill, I gotta say, as a reader. Her next work, Vanish with the Rose, very well written, but almost nothing happens. And the stupid book cover in the back, is it in the back or in the inside? It it tells you basically the plot twist right there in the step back cover. It tells you that she's this woman pretending to be an expert on rose gardens, and she's helping replenish this mansion's enormous garden. And it turns out she's not who she appears to be. She's pretending to be this expert in order to find her dead brother who used to live on that estate. But you don't really find that out in the book till like page 250. But the step back cover tells you what she's up to the whole time. It says, looking for her dead brother. You don't know that in the book until very late. So I don't know why they bother to reveal something so important right on the first page. I hate when the covers back in the 90s did that. It's kind of stupid. Dean Koontz books used to do that a lot too in the 90s. It would just tell you who the killer was right on the first page or on the back cover. I didn't like that. So low tier, I wouldn't recommend that one at all. I'd say middle tier for this one. It gets a little bit better. The writing comes back to good prose. Nice characters. Not much of a plot. Mostly women talking. This woman is trying to find out about why there's this mysterious half-buried house of stone behind her property, and who built it, and why it's there. And it's involving like an ancient curse, a lot of references to Emily Dickinson. I'm not sure why, but I like that. But otherwise, the plot, not much going on there. So I'd say a lower to middle tier. Up next, 1995, Stitches in Time, kind of indirect sequel to both her earlier books, Amy Come Home and Shattered Silk. They take place in the same town and have some of the same previous characters, now much older. And this girl has this possessed quilt. I think it was a quilt or a shawl. Something she puts on when she goes to sleep, and it causes her to become possessed by some kind of spirit that makes her attack people, and she becomes. I mean, it's implied she might be schizophrenic, but maybe it's both. Like something about this evil piece of cloth. It has an evil curse stitched into it, and they have to figure out how to undo it, either supernaturally or simply just by guessing or solving the crime that the ghost is causing to happen. Here's a step back cover of picture of the fabric. Just okay. Not highly recommended. I'd say lower tier, unfortunately. Mostly just, again, women having conversations over lunch, trying to sort things out historically, and then it gets revealed, and it's kind of out there explanation of why the thing was cursed. So nearing the end, her second to last book, 1997, The Dancing Floor. A lovely image, something she brought up majorly. It was a major plot point in The Sea King's Daughter. But The Dancing Floor was something from Mycenae. What's his name? King Minos. He had this huge labyrinth. But archaeologists don't believe there really was a literal labyrinth. It was a giant mosaic on the floor that was all, filled in with patterns. And women would dance on the patterns, showed you which direction it moved, as you were dancing. And it's a fascinating metaphor. I like that. It's about a woman who's trying to help an English estate recreate this huge hedge maze garden. And I don't remember a whole bunch of the plot. I don't remember there much being. I just remember it was just kind of bland. It had a neat premise, and I don't remember it really going anywhere. So unfortunately, again, her later books, it just felt as she became more famous, they felt phoned in. It's nowhere as good as her 70s stuff and her early 80s stuff. So finally we get to the end, and this is her final novel, as Barbara Michaels. She still wrote some after this as Elizabeth Peters, but Other Worlds. This was 1999. It ends on a good note, not top tier, but I'd say middle tier. But it's not exactly a original story. It's what is his name? Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of Sherlock Holmes, and Harry Houdini meeting up with Montague Summers, a famous occultist from the 19th century. They're all meeting up, having dinner together, and discussing famous ghost cases from the past. Like half of the book is them discussing the famous Bell Witch from the early 1800s in America, the Bell Witch incident, and they all disagree on what was happening, whether that was supernatural, whether the girl, I think Betsy, I don't remember, in the Bell Witch incident, whether she murdered her father and just made up the witch stuff, whether she was schizophrenic and throwing her voice, and people were too dumb to know about that kind of thing in the 1800s, which is what they ultimately decide was happening. And so it's just that. It's just some men discussing ghost cases. A little bit like Peter Straub's ghost story in a random way, old men talking about ghost stories. But it ends on a good note. I'd say middle tier. So everybody, thanks for listening. Altogether, I'd recommend most of her books. None of them are absolutely, I don't feel like I wasted time reading them. But if you're going to read any of her books, I'd say Amy Come Home, Be Buried in the Rain, Someone in the House, and Search the Shadows. Read those, and you'll get her style and get something, a fun time out of it. So anyway, good night, everybody. Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening.